Great, thank you. Let's make a start. I appreciate there's, because of the apologies for the late starting of the meeting, that was because of an overrun from the previous meeting, and we are just awaiting one member, but I believe they're not far off, and I think we should make a start and crack on. So I'd like to start by welcoming you and members of the press and public via the live stream of this meeting. The Fire Authority, just to remind everyone, allows filming and photography, and so please feel free to take pictures and tweet during the meeting. Can I ask, though, that everyone present turns their mobile phones to silent or vibrate while the meeting is taking place? That's a mental note to self as well, so I haven't done that yet. The meeting room has been arranged to comply with public health guidance on COVID safety. So committee members and officers are advised that it's safe to remove coverings at the start of the meeting and replace them at the end. A couple of housekeeping points, as some of you may be unfamiliar with this building. So toilets are available in the corridor adjacent to the room, and I hope we will complete the meeting within 2 hours, but if we do need to take a comfort break, that's helpful information, I hope. There's no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, it is real, and I will adjourn the meeting, and we are to make our way downstairs because the muster point is on the green opposite the main entrance. So, Dawn, do we have any apologies?
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you very much. Does any member wish to declare a disclosable pecuniary interest or a non-statutory disclosable interest at this point? I see no hands. Thank you very much. First item is we're being asked to approve the minutes of the meeting on the 23rd of June as an accurate record. Does any member want to raise a question on the accuracy of the minutes? Please do so now. I see no hands, so I take those minutes as carried unanimously. So, first item of substantive business on the agenda then is the chair announcements. In the interest of time and brevity, I have included them in the public documents, and I have nothing more to add to them at this point, unless there's anyone wants to raise any questions about them. Yes, Councillor Kindersley.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to extend thanks to Chief Officer and officers for the seminar this morning, which I thought was splendid. So thank you very much. And I particularly enjoyed the video tour of the Canongate Fire Station, and look forward to seeing the inside in real life.
Thank you very much. Those are points well made indeed. Any other points? No, thank you very much. And let us move on then to the report on the audit progress. We have Matthew Weller and Rachel Britton of BDO, I understand, who are on Zoom. So would you like to introduce the key points here, please?
Thank you, Chair. So just to introduce myself, I'm Rachel Britton. I am the Director responsible for signing the audit opinion of the Fire Authority. Just wanted to give you a brief update, and then I'll hand over to Matthew, who will take you through the key points in the report you have in front of you. Just wanted to say that when I presented the audit plan to Overview and Scrutiny Committee back in July, I did outline the challenges that we faced with the delivery of the audits this year and gave the reasons for that. So in that context, whilst we've made really good progress on this audit to date, we are not yet in the position that we can conclude. We do have some areas of audit testing outstanding, which we'll be working to complete over the next few weeks. Obviously, I appreciate this position is not what you're used to, However, I just wanted to reassure you that you're not out of line with other bodies, other local government bodies. Only 9% of the audits were actually signed by the deadline. So I think that just goes to represent sort of how much of a challenging year we have had this year. So the report in front of you today highlights the findings from the audit progress to date. Matthew will talk you through the details. Following that presentation, we may wish to have a discussion about how we take forward the finalisation of the audit and make sure that you've fulfilled your requirements in terms of the governance processes. So I'll hand over to Matthew now, who'll take you through some detail.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to take this report largely as read, and I'm just going to go through the sort of key highlights of it. So I'm going to start on page 5, where we set out our materiality for the audit. So the key point to raise here is that our materiality is in line with that reported in the audit planning report back in July, and has only been amended to update for the figures in the draft accounts. I'm then going to jump to the risk section. So on page 8, we've listed out our 4 risks to the audit, which were management override of controls, expenditure cut-off, valuation of non-current assets, and valuation of pension liability. In respect of management override of controls, we've used our data analytics tool to identify a number of journals which go outside of our normal expectations for what the authority would be posting. We've reviewed all such journals and identified that there were no issues with any of them and did not believe any of those journals to constitute management override. In respect of expenditure cut-off, we've selected a sample of items for testing either side of the year end. To date, we've identified no issues in respect of amounts being included in the accounts in the wrong year. This testing is still, however, ongoing. For valuation of non-current assets, the Fire Authority has employed an external valuer to review all the land and building assets as at the 31st of March 2021. Our testing of this is about 80% complete at the moment. To date, we've not found any issues and have nothing to report to the committee at this moment in time. In respect of the pension fund, so the pension fund was audited by the auditors of Cambridgeshire County Council, who are the pension fund administrator. They have reported to us a couple of misstatements, which they have recommended we raise to you. So the first of these is that the assets of the pension fund were valued as at the 31st of December 2020 and not as at the 31st of March 2021. They've estimated there was a movement in the pension fund assets of 441,000 between these two dates. Our next amount is in respect of one of the lines in the pension fund as the expected return on plan assets. This has been recalculated, and the recalculated amount is £237,000 different to the figure used by the actuary. Through discussions with the authority's finance team, we decided it was preferable to raise this as an unadjusted misstatement rather than investigate why our recalculated figure was different to that calculated by the actuary. We then have the Mcleod Judgment. So Mcleod was something for which a material adjustment was made to the accounts in the prior year. At that moment in time, the actuary calculated the value of the adjustment as at the 31st of March 2020. The actuary has confirmed to us that they have not reassessed that calculation as at the 31st of March 2021. And as a result, the figure that they are now included in their report, which is in your accounts, is a year out of date. We've estimated the potential adjustment for moving 1 year forward in time, and we've assessed that the maximum potential impact is 76,000. I would stress that that's a maximum amount, and the likelihood is that the actual impact is probably a much lower figure than that. And finally, we've recalculated benefits paid and come up with a difference of 161,000 between the figure provided by the actuary and our recalculated figure. Similar with the expected return on plan assets, we've decided to raise this as an unadjusted misstatement rather than try and work out why our recalculated figure is different to that used by the actuary. On the next couple of pages, so pages 16 and 17, we've listed out all the assumptions used, by the actuary and concluded that they are all in line with the expected ranges that we would usually see. So that concludes our risks. We've included a bit of narrative in our report on pages 18 and 19 regarding going concern. The headline factor here is that we do believe the fire authority to be a going concern, and our narrative on these pages sets out our reasoning for that being the case. I'm then going to jump straight to our unadjusted misstatement list, which starts on page 21. The headline here is that we have 8 unadjusted misstatements, which, if they were adjusted in the financial statements, would decrease the deficit on the provision of services by 597,000 and would decrease net liabilities by 128,000. Of the 8 we've raised, 4 of them relate to the pension fund adjustments, which I've just gone through in detail. The next 2 on the list on page 23 relate to classification adjustments only. So the first of these are that creditor balances have been included within debtors, and the second is a classification issue within the debtors note, where accrued income balances have been included as prepayments. For now, we have included these as unadjusted misstatements. However, we are still discussing these with the authority, and there is a possibility that these could be adjusted in the final accounts. That position is still to be agreed. So as they are not adjusted at this moment in time, we have left them on our unadjusted misstatement list for now. Our numbers 7 and 8 on this list are issues identified in the prior year that have a current year impact. So number 7 is the same issue with the pension fund, in that the assets were valued as at the 31st of December 2019 in the prior year, and not as at the 31st of March 2020. So the 170,000 listed in our report represents the difference in the value of the pension assets between those dates. Number 8 on the list is in respect of income recognition. So we identified an income amount in the prior year audit, which related to 2020-21, but had been incorrectly recognised in the 2019-20 year. We extrapolated that to a projected misstatement of 62,000. So what we're basically reporting here is that income of approximately 62,000, which relates to this current year, was recognised in the prior year. So the actual cumulative position at current year end is correct in respect of that amount. On page 25, we set out that there are no audit differences which management are currently expected to adjust. We have identified one audit adjustment since in the last few days, which we will require an amendment for. So this relates to our business, no, it's cancelled, sorry. This relates to a council tax creditor from the district councils, which has been incorrectly mapped to debtors in the financial statements and is currently sitting as a negative debtor in the accounts. So we've asked for a reclassification for that to be moved to creditors. That one is a material amount, so that we will require an adjustment for that. The last thing I would then like to mention is our recommendations on the report. So the good news is we have not raised any new recommendations this year. We have 3 brought forward recommendations from last year, one of which we have now confirmed is cleared in respect of the use of generic user IDs to post journals. The other 2, so one of these is a management review of the valuation of net pension liability, which is where we recommended that the finance team reviewed our reports from the actuary after they received them. This control has now been implemented in response to our recommendation, and the authority is now operating this control. We have kept the recommendation open on the basis that we believe the control could be expanded on and cover more than what it does at this moment in time. And our final recommendation is about related party declaration forms. So last year, there were a number that weren't received from members. This year, we can confirm we have received a declaration from all active members. There are 2 we were unable to obtain as part of the audit, but neither of those 2 are active at this moment in time. So our revised recommendation is to ensure that the authority obtains a declaration from all members who are leaving before they leave the authority, as we acknowledge it is very difficult to obtain them after a member has left. And that concludes everything I would like to say on the report. I will take the rest of the report as read and happy to take any questions at this stage.
Thank you very much for that full explanation. Are there any comments that you would like to make, please?
I can come in there, Chair. Just in terms of the actuarial valuation, I think it's probably worth putting into context the liability on the pension fund, particularly the firefighter pension fund, where we're talking between 250 and 300 million pounds. So let's just, the context in terms of that unadjusted misstatement, and also the practice of valuing at the 31st of December is a normal one. Now, I appreciate that there are 3 months that then pass between the 31st of December and the 31st of March, but actuaries are like our friends in BDO are also subject to quite a lot of pressure at year end of valuing not just our pension fund and Cambridgeshire's pension fund, but many others. So I think just to put the context behind why there is a variation between those two figures and what BDO are working to, obviously. So I'm relatively comfortable in terms of the suggestions around adjusting the final two elements that Matthew was talking about there. Absolutely happy to do that, and we should be reclassifying where it's appropriate, and particularly around the debtor on council tax, that needs to be corrected. So we'll make sure that's done, and I'll take that back as well. But other than that, no. I mean, I know it's been a challenging year for everybody, certainly from a BDO perspective, but I think certainly my team and we've had quite a turnover in finance since the last time I met with the Fire Authority. I've lost 2 members of the team. We've added 2 new members, and so I think the team have done remarkably well to get to this point. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the update, members of BDO. Appreciate this is a work in progress, and we're asked today to give any feedback and then to note the work in progress. So, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Can I just, basically there seems to be a lot of variances, a long list of them, 400,000, it just sort of seems a lot of figures that need to be adjusted. Or did I mishear things?
Thank you. I don't think you did mishear, but perhaps you would like to comment on that.
Yeah.
I can come in again. So I think in terms of the report, as you can see, is set out. It talks about materiality, and the materiality is set by BDO, and Matthew can add to this, I'm sure, or Rachel. I think that they take a view in terms of, okay, in the context of our accounts, whether it be the balance sheet or the income and expenditure account, what needs to be adjusted absolutely now. They'll be adjusted in future years, but what needs to be adjusted right now to ensure that those represent a really accurate position. What they're suggesting is, because of the materiality around these figures, particularly because they relate to pensions largely, and that pension sum is 350 whatever million it may be.
It'd be nice to know, not whatever million.
Yeah, I can give you the exact figure. But effectively, what we're suggesting is that isn't material in respect of that figure, so it doesn't fundamentally change the accounts. That's effectively what we're saying here. We could adjust. There's a lot of work to adjust. So we're taking a view. Let's put it right in the next financial year as opposed to this one, if that makes sense.
It does to an extent. It just sort of seems there seems to be a long list of things to be adjusted, and I don't remember a list like that. That's all. Big figures, they always concern me. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, we generally I would say we've always had a list about this long. So if you look back historically, we always have 5, 6, 7 unadjusted. I'm not saying adjusted, unadjusted misstatements. Because as you go through, this is complicated. Some of this stuff is very, very complicated and blows my mind, even Councillor Smith. So I think in that.
Yeah, I do understand some things. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Thank you very much. I mean, we are, as the report says, we are those charged with governance, TCWG. So it is absolutely appropriate that we probe and ask these questions, but it is a work in progress. And as far as I'm concerned, I feel reasonably confident because in audits I participated in, there's often midway through, there's often quite a few issues still to get to the bottom of. And I note that the change in valuation reflects sometimes you can get big changes in valuation just by shifting the point in time when you value an asset. And in recent times, it's been the asset values have been fluctuating a great deal, whereas normal times you would expect it to shift around less. Councillor Bywater.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you very much. Very useful report. As you say, it's very detailed. I guess us as a fire authority, I'd just like to know when we're going to see it in the future, you know, so that we know we're going in the right directions, really. If you could explain that, please.
Would you like to answer that, please?
I can, yes. So in terms of the statement of accounts are obviously drafts subject to the final tests that BDO are going to do on them, so we can bring them back to Fire Authority for information in December, because hopefully Matthew and Rachel, I look at you, will be signed off by then. In terms of so that I can bring the report in terms of the actual robustness of those statements. That's what this is saying, and this report will obviously need to be finalised and sent round to all members once BDO have concluded and their opinion is final. In terms of, I'm just bringing up the balance sheet on my phone for Councillor Smith, just to put it into context, what the assets are for. He says, trying to find it. Right, balance sheet. So in terms of pensions, where's my pension reserve? There we go. Hunters long-term liabilities, 378 million. So I'm trying to just put it into context of where that is largely the firefighter scheme, firefighter pension scheme. And we'll obviously have an update when Mcleod and Sergeant is finally concluded, and we have a remedy, because actually that liability is likely to increase as well.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the update. Kindersley.
Thank you, Chairman. Unlike Councillor Smith, I don't have too much concern about this. This is an organisation, after all, of, I think it's about 30 million that we spend in the course of a year. And I think that the scrutiny committee gave the auditors a bit of a going over. So I'm fairly confident on that basis as well. And the last point I would make is that pensions, obviously a bit of a mystery, the way actuaries work in terms of pensions and how they assess them and all the rest of it. But I think in common with practically everybody else, it's not a desperately upsetting picture if you think you're going to live forever, which I think we all do.
Thank you very much. So we've been asked to note the report and so and give feedback, which we have done, so duly noted. If I may make a slight adjustment to the order in which we deal with matters, I would like to deal with agenda items 6 and 10 next, because I think they all naturally sit together. The annual report and statement of assurance and the draft annual governance statement were asked to agree the draft and approve for publication both of those documents. So who would like to introduce the annual report?
I can do that. Yeah. And just if there are questions, so I'm not going to go through it in detail because you'll appreciate it's quite a large report. I'll just pick up the salient points. Hopefully you'll appreciate that, you know, this report covers the period of COVID, or the predominant period of COVID, so it is quite COVID centric in many areas, but I think it's just worth adding that context when you look at some other things that we have done. So as a result, I'll just pick up some key points. We've completed and introduced new handheld radios. New turntable ladders were introduced through the period of COVID. We've continued to engage with regard to community safety, and particularly things like, I mean, some members may have seen, we've actually, our fire break program we started up, and we've actually, we've got some really great experience. We continue to work with the public as much as we could through that period. We've focused on our people, and when we say our people, we are really trying to engage all of our wonderful professional people on things like menopause, so we understand as an organisation the effects the menopause can have on our female members of staff. We continue to lead in terms of leadership development, and that's been fantastic. And again, perhaps Chris may want to add, we put ourselves in great stead, and over the last 18 months, whilst we've seen a lot of people, we would say, leave the organisation, many of them have gone on to be senior officers in other fire and rescue services. So I think at the last count, last week, we've got a number of area commanders, a number of chief fire officers, a number of very senior officers in other fire and rescue services that served in Cambridgeshire. And some of that is because of all the leadership development we have been doing over the years. So I think from a value for money perspective, we continue to obviously look at our new mobilising system with Suffolk. Obviously, we've got the St John's site that we're really pushing ahead with now. So lots of stuff, but I think it's probably enough just to stop there and ask questions. And I know Hayley's on the line as well, Hayley Douglas. So if there's any questions that I can't answer, because Hayley did write this report predominantly, not me, so I'm not going to take the credit for it.
Thank you very much indeed. Open the floor to questions, comments. Oh, I beg your pardon, Chief Fire Officer.
So I just thought it would be worth, because my name is mentioned, so I think I'd speak. Yeah, in the last 2 to 3 years, well, in fact, I'd say the last 10 years, we've worked really hard on developing our staff, and we are seeing the benefits of that internally. And we know that in the last round of our HMI report, we were seen to be one of the best fire and rescue services in the country from external inspection. I can't say too much about the one that's coming, but put it this way, we're not disappointed with what we'll see. And in terms of other services taking on our staff and our people moving on to other areas, we've actually got, and this again, this is within the last 2 to 3 years, 2 substantive chief fire officers. So those members who have been around will remember Rick Hilton, who's now in Essex, and Callum, who's in Leicestershire, Callum Faint. We have Ryan Stacey, who's now a substantive assistant chief officer in Lincolnshire. We have Carl Bowden, who went to Leicestershire as an area commander, is now temporary assistant chief. We have Chris Parker, who went to Essex as an area commander, and I've no doubt will be vying for the positions that will be coming up very shortly at principal officer level there. And Dave Lynch was our last one to leave us, and he has gone to Lincolnshire as an area commander. So that shows the quality that we have in our organisation. And as the chief, I can say that we have got equally good people who've replaced those members of staff, and we are still firing all cylinders. So I just thought I'd mention that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Slatter.
This is trivia really, but page 11, I hope we can put Councillor Reynolds' dates in properly, or is it just the version I'm seeing? He's an XXX at one point, which I'm sure is not an adequate tribute to his chairing of this authority.
Yes, no, indeed, it is subject to proofreading and a final edit and so on. So thank you very much for picking up the points that I'm confident that and other points will be picked up. Are we happy then to approve for publication subject to final proofreading? Yes, thank you very much. And thank you very much for all the work that's gone into that. Item 10, if we may move to item 10, the draft annual governance statement. Who would like to speak to that?
Thank you, Chair. So this report, or this draft governance statement, has actually been through the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, who have considered it in terms of significant findings, which is detailed at the very end of the report. Clearly, the progression of the new build at a new training centre and fire station at Huntingdon is one that we need to continually keep under review, along with other property collaborations, which were mentioned this morning on the call, particularly with regard to St Neots and the police. And then really any other central government consultations, particularly in terms of fire sector reform, that we know are ongoing. And whilst at the moment there is no timescale, I don't believe, Chris, is there, in terms of when that white paper may be published. Clearly, we need to keep abreast of what that might look like for us as a fire and rescue service should it come about. So other than that, everything else, all of the reviews of effectiveness, all the controls that we have in place, clearly government framework is subject to some review later on this agenda, but as a governance statement that is presented for your approval.
Thank you again. May I offer it to the floor, and again Sebastian Kinsley for scrutiny.
Thank you, Chairman. As Chairman of the Scrutiny and Overview and Scrutiny Committee, I simply want to reiterate, as Matthew's already said, that we agreed its publication without further comment because it's pretty straightforward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jamil.
It's a question to Matthew, really. Could we ever be in a position where, I know we've allocated the money for our new training centre in HQ, could we ever be in a position where government turn around to and say, you can't do this now, or, because of the, following on from this morning's, conversation about budgets?
No, we are in contract. There is the contract sum has been agreed. They are on site and that money has been committed. So no.
Thank you. Any other comments or feedback, or are we happy to approve this for publication? Great. Thank you very much. If we may return then to the order of the agenda, the agenda item 5. This is a considerable piece of work that's been undertaken, and there's been a lot of consultation prior to this date. We have an ambition to address our develop a coherent set of what you might call constitutional documents. And today it's very important, I think, to focus on what we are trying to decide, because we have a number of documents to consider and comment on. But we are looking for approval of the overview document, which is in Appendix 1, approval of the wording on the members' allowance scheme, and views and comments on Appendices 3 and 5. So I think just to keep those endpoints in our mind, if I may hand over to Shaheen to introduce the papers.
Thank you, Chair. So members, you have quite a detailed paper in front of you with 7 appendices in total. Some of those are the current standing orders or the current documents that we're looking at and the proposed changes. But if I can just briefly take you, first of all, through the drivers for these changes. In terms of the delegations to the Chief Fire Officer, and as a consequence, what this authority does or doesn't do and delegates to the Chief, the drivers for that really come from the emerging national landscape with the Home Office, the White Paper, closer alignment with the way police services are delivered, and it's really to ensure operational independence for the Chief Fire Officer. And I'll come on to those documents in just a moment. The second driver, and that relates to the standing orders, I think since the political composition of this authority has changed, we've seen a couple of meetings where the numbers are so tight that decision making has been stymied effectively. So I think we need to ensure that there's no impasse on being able to conduct business. There are some other minor changes, and it's good practice, of course, to ensure that the governance framework that we use is fit for purpose for the changing environment that we operate in. If I can just then quickly take you through the main changes, and it may be that I'll pause after each proposed set of changes so that we can take them take questions in that way, Chair, if I may. First of all, there's a new document. It's Appendix 1. It's an overview document. When we did an informal session, a large set of the comments were, well, look, we ought to have somewhere coherently set out what the authority does, how it interrelates with the two principal authorities and its officers. So Appendix 1, and that's your papers, page 23 onwards, is just a short document, I hope setting out that overview. Members will see there is some inconsistency in the photos, especially with members' photos. Those are the photos we've been given from the two authorities, so they don't quite look consistent. But when we're back at service headquarters, the intention is to take fresh photos in the fire authority's consistent style. If I can pause there, perhaps. I don't know if there are any questions or comments. This is an iterative document, and hopefully it will just improve as we go on. It's a starter for 10, really.
Thank you. Comments? Sebastian.
Thank you. The only comment I would make, other than one of regret that we're going to have new photographs, seeing as mine dates back to 2005, and I'd much rather leave it there, is the web version. I think it would be really useful if we could end this with a link to the paper that we have just discussed, which is an overview of activity and so on during the previous year, because it is easily updatable.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion. Any other comments? Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The comments are really regard to the document as a whole. And first of all, I don't want to sound curlish or obstructive, and please take these comments in a manner that they're meant. I will be brief. As you heard this morning, we are up against it financially and will only get worse with possible adjustments to frontline services. Therefore, we are disappointed that so much time and resource has been invested in something of such low priority and did not need doing at this moment in time. As we all know, governance change is still on the horizon, and these changes will by necessity be done then. So we're going to be going through the same exercise twice. In the timescale, I'm not certain of, because it's down to the central government. Therefore, we don't feel we're able to support what is in front of us. We will be abstaining from the vote and not debate the matter in any great depth. It is a considerable piece of work, as you said yourself, and far too much resource has gone into it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do you have any other comments? Yes.
Thank you. I actually welcome this new information. The previous information was totally outdated and it needed to be updated, and I will be supporting this.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Jamil.
Yeah, Councillor has just spoken. I agree, we need it updated. And also, if we look back to our last meeting, had people been a bit more reasonable and amenable, we probably wouldn't have been in this situation, and maybe it wouldn't have needed to be done. But now, it reflects the situation of the authority at the moment. So I will also be supporting this.
Thank you. So we have, as far as this particular document is concerned, it's about consider and approve. So can we vote to approve it? At this point, those in favour? Those against? Those abstaining? Thank you very much. So then we have the next section.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the terms of reference of the committee. So that's the Fire Authority and its committees. I've set out a paragraph 5.3 of my report. That's at page 19, the main changes, and I'll just very quickly run through those. First main change is currently the Fire Authority appoints the Chief Fire Officer, the Deputy and the Assistant Chief Fire Officer, effectively your Chief Officer team. The proposal is that the Fire Authority continues to appoint, obviously, the Chief Fire Officer, but again, in line with the requirement that he has operational independence, for him to then select his Chief Officer team. The process that you currently have, I think, works really well. Those who've been involved in the past, where members are involved in a recruitment a couple of days with different exercises. It's not envisaged that any of that changes. The subtle change is that after that process, it's the Chief Fire Officer who says, well, this is my team, or this is my candidate who I would like, and is accountable for that person to the Fire Authority. So that's the first main change. That would always come to the Fire Authority for ratification, of course, but the important change is the selection is the chiefs, if you accept this recommendation. The second major change is the role of the Fire Authority in appeals against dismissal. Currently, whether it's firefighters or support staff, if they are dismissed on grounds of misconduct, a right of appeal sits with a committee of this Fire Authority. That's quite unusual in other public sector bodies. That sits within the service rather than at the strategic board level, if you like. And so that is just a realignment, and again emphasises operational independence and operational control of operational staff resting with the chief rather than with the Fire Authority. This change is a material change and will require consultation with the representative bodies. So the recommendation is not to approve this today, but to take your views, and we know what the Chief Officer team's views which is to support this, so that those views can go forward to consultation, and that consultation with the rep bodies can be meaningful. Chair, then there are a few minor changes, a slight expansion of what we have called the Discipline Committee to now call Disciplinary and Grievance Committee. That is the committee that if there is any disciplinary or grievance issues in the Chief Officer team, that still then comes to the Fire Authority, because obviously there isn't another body to which that can go. At the moment, there's no reference to grievances that those officers might have, and it's just good employment law practice to have a forum for them to be able to raise those should they wish to do so. So that's just a slight expansion of that committee. And then, of course, there's an appeal committee from that, which you're required to have in employment law, and a slight expansion to that as well. There has been, ever since I've been here since 2014, a policy steering group which has never met. I think that has really been replaced by the regular seminars like the type we had this morning, and so that's just a minor name change. So, Chairman, those are the main changes there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, open it up for comments. Councillor Kindersley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy with all of those. It all makes solid sense, and so I'm happy to propose that we accept those changes.
Thank you very much. Unless there are any other comments? Yes.
Members, hi. I just wanted to make a couple of points on the appointment recommendation, because I was consulted, and it was my recommendation that we take this process. There's some reassurance I want to provide, because ultimately the authority makes the decision about who the team is. However, I think, and having been through a number of these processes, I think what I was asking for is a bit more clarity about the ability of the Chief Fire Officer to make a recommendation to the authority about who the Chief Fire Officer would like in their team. So no different to a football manager choosing their team. The Chief Fire Officer, whoever that is, still remains accountable, and the Fire Authority still hold the power to make the decision and to hold the Chief Fire Officer to account. So I think it strengthens the position of the authority, because actually it separates you slightly from the decision and enables you to take hold the chief fire officer to account in a better way, because actually, you know, that person will have chosen their team and then they're responsible, accountable for that. That was my thinking. It's not about trying to take away the opportunity of the fire authority to have a big say in who the future team is for the authority. And the reality is, looking at the current team, I'm unlikely to be in that position to actually make that decision, which is why I'm making it very clear it's the chief officer of the future, and not Chris Strickland. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very helpful, because it is an important change that is being proposed here, which is very important to support the chief fire officer and also strengthen our governance. Any other comments or points? So I believe that this item we are being asked to approve in principle, but there is going to be subject to further consultation. So can I ask for a vote, those in favour of approving this in principle, please? Yes. Any against? And those abstaining? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Then it follows from those changes to your committee terms of reference that the scheme of delegation that sits with the chief fire officer and other senior officers reflects those changes. So that is proposed here. The document name, there's a name change, scheme of delegation, everybody understands what that is. We've formalized in this document the urgency powers of the chair that were always there but were never written down in the standing orders. So that's just a clarification point. And we've just put together the role of treasurer and deputy chief exec, because they are complementary roles carried out by the same person. In terms of financial delegation limits, those haven't changed, but the procurement language has obviously changed post-Brexit. So that's just a nominal change just to correct the language. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any comments on those points? To some extent, we've anticipated many of the items and already discussed them. So if there are no further points, I would also say that we should vote on approving this in principle, subject to further consultation. Those in favour? Those against? Those abstaining? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. And then I'll take the last two together. The first is changes to standing orders. For the reasons I set out when I introduced this report, I think there is a driver for certain change. The main changes then are terminology, gender neutral terminology, and I think whoever's in the chair has their preference of how to refer to that, but that is what's being proposed. The other main change is for the chair to remain as chair until a successor is appointed, so that the existing chair next year at the annual meeting would preside over the annual meeting and its appointment process. And I think that's a positive step, because that gives continuity from the last meeting and any elections, because there can be a hiatus and it's not clear where decision making or power sits. A key change that I'm proposing is that the chair has a casting vote in the event of a tied vote. As I've said already, we've seen that play out already and has prevented business from being decided. There are alternatives, but none of them are particularly democratic, such as the flip of a coin or drawing of lots. So this is fairly standard, I think, in the public sector. Also suggesting a change of when committee chairs are appointed, and the suggestion is that all happens at the annual meeting, which is perfectly standard and right. I think that 17 members have a say in the main committees. At present, for whatever reason, historically, the fire authorities, two main committees have voted on their chairmen within those committees themselves, but this just aligns it to, I think, good practice and what happens at your principal councils. I've just done some clarifications on the voting processes, such as recorded votes and what have you. and there's a change to the members' attendance process. I think we had a quite draconian process before. If a member failed to attend for 2 consecutive meetings, there was a suggestion that their allowances would be withheld. I think that's very difficult because all of the members here are appointed to the Fire Authority by your principal councils, and it seems to me that if there is a problem in attendance, that is an issue to take back to your principal councils for them to discuss and to consider alternative appointments. You are not directly elected, and so the whole system of dispensations and the legal framework on that doesn't apply. So I hope this is a much more equitable way of early warnings if a member can't attend for whatever reasons, discuss within the group, and then potentially taken back to your principal authorities to look at further. And the final thing, Chair, if I may, is just a nominal change to the allowance scheme, just to reflect the changes of the political groups. But next time, your next full meeting, I will be bringing back the full allowance scheme for a review. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Comments, Councillor Slatter.
Yes, rather like when I made comments before, I'm looking at this sometimes as somebody just coming onto the website, wondering it all about. A question that people often ask is, well, who made up the amounts for the allowances? What is the basis of this? I mean, then I suddenly realized I didn't know. Is it a national protocol or habit or whatever? I hope it's something fairly justifiable, in which case maybe in the source documents, if there is a guidance from central government or wherever, what allowances should be, that would be I think, quite helpful for a member of the public just landing on this and having a read. Does that make sense?
Yes. So the system that happens with councils to agree allowances is to have an independent review panel, and the Fire Authority, being the size it is, has usually piggybacked onto the Cambridgeshire County Council's independent review panel and taken the allowances scheme from that, because that has all been very thoroughly looked at. It may be in the future that we have our own independent review panel or not, but those are the options I'll be bringing back next time. But there is an independent panel, and it looks at local circumstances. It benchmarks against peer councils of the same size, etc. So there is a completely independent process that sets that. This is just an extract from the allowances scheme. There is a fulsome allowances scheme on the website, but I think your suggestion is great, and I will make sure that we reference the IRP process.
I think as Councillor Kinsley said before, if this is an online version, a link does help.
Thank you very much. I think it's a good point to have a clarification of the origin of the sort of etiology of these of the allowances. But I hasten to add, we are not looking at increasing the allowances. This is or changing them in any way. So this is just to make sure that's clear. Any other comments? Councillor Kinsley.
Thank you, Chair. My question is in relation to point 5.7.2, which is whereby the chairman remains in post until the point in the next annual meeting at which a new chairman is appointed. My question is, if that outgoing chairman is no longer a councillor, are they able to do that?
That is a good question.
By the time we get to our annual meeting at the Fire Authority, it's usually in June, so we would know that position. I think that's absolutely right. That wouldn't be possible, and I think we need to have something in there to say that the vice chair will probably assume that role.
Thank you, because at some point, because it is a fundamental qualification that you have to be a councillor, and there will have to be provisions for if chair or vice chair are unable to fulfil their role, then it's usual to have stand-ins and substitutes and so on. So thank you very much. That's a good point. Any other comments? No other comments? Thank you very much. So this is an area which we were being asked to approve, subject to investigating that point. Thank you very much. May I ask for a show of hands, those in favour of approving them? Thank you. Those against? And those abstaining? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed for your work and all your contributions on this on these items. So let's move to agenda item 7, the firefighter pensions update. Focus on immediate detriment, and we're being asked to note and approve the revised approach to immediate detriment. So Matthew, perhaps you could explain.
Thank you, members. You'll appreciate this has been ongoing for some considerable time now. The firefighters' pension scheme was amended, and there was transitional arrangements put in place. Those transitional arrangements were challenged back in 2015. They were challenged. 2018, the decision by the tribunal was that they were not deemed to be appropriate and found in favour of Mcleod and Sargent. So since that point in time, we have been waiting for guidance from government in terms of, okay, how do we implement these provisions then to effectively mean that those people that have retired or being able to retire are put in a less financially difficult position than they were at the time. It is extremely complicated because, as some of you will know, there are tax benefits for pension deductions that need to be worked back. There are different contribution rates for pensions for the different pension schemes that need to be retrospectively applied. So it was very difficult, and actually at that point we said we're going to hold our nerve and not pay these until not because we didn't want to pay them, but until we had proper guidance from government. Clearly, the NJC and LGA have been negotiating with the FBU because there was talk of a further challenge against those authorities that were not paying, and we were one of those, and I did bring that recommendation earlier in the year. However, as you can see, it's moved on a little bit, and there is now an agreement between the LGA on behalf of Fire Services and the FBU that actually, if we proceed to make these payments, and we have to do that through our administrator, then there won't, if they're wrong, there won't be effectively any challenge back to us as a fire and rescue service, which was the significant concern that I had at the time, because we still don't know. Now they're going to do their best estimates, and South Yorkshire, who are our West Yorkshire, sorry, who are our pension administrator, have said they can do it. It does have some challenges, but they can do it, and I think they're more relaxed about doing it now. There are some challenges around the timescales that have been agreed within the memorandum of understanding, which effectively says that from the time of getting it, you'll pay it within just over 60 days. That's a challenge, but I think, you know, in the spirit of the agreement, I'm recommending that as an authority we do now proceed and start to pay people that are coming up to retirement, and they're category 1 people. So if they can retire and take the benefits of their original pension scheme, then they should do, and we'll look to retrospectively pay those people that have already retired, that would have preferred to retire on the old scheme. We'll retrospectively pay those benefits as well, but they will be category 2, so they will follow. Now, clearly, we've already had, because this is obviously out there, we've already had people obviously applying for those, so we'll have to manage those expectations. But my strong recommendation now is that we now move to pay these people, and hopefully resolve. And going back to the earlier conversation with our auditors, clearly we'll hopefully have a better understanding of what the future liability of the pension fund is at that point.
Thank you very much. That's very well summarised, and it's really good to be in a position to have a way that we can lawfully and without risk actually honour the change in the entitlement that the case brought about. Do we have any comments or observations about this? Councillor Slatter.
So I'm still struggling with the main county council pension board and Mcleod, etc. But I wonder, just on a human level, it seems to me that if we pay somebody and we've made a mistake and we try and get it back, that's something to really avoid. If the decision now is that would have the implications of our deciding as you recommend today would mean that wouldn't happen, could you just assure me, because I'm sorry if I didn't follow it in your explanation, but what I would hate to do, especially as somebody who has not a massive pension, to actually ask for some of it back is just cruel, really.
Would you like to answer?
If we made a mistake and it was a material mistake, then we would ask for it back, but we would ask for it to be repaid over the time that generally the mistake was made over. So they'd have the same amount of time to pay it back, if that makes some sense. But yeah, hopefully there won't be any of those material differences. And ultimately, it's public money. So if we do make a mistake and it's fundamental, then clearly we have a duty to recover that where possible. But common sense often does prevail as well, Councillor Sloan.
Thank you. Any other comments? No, thank you very much indeed. So we've been asked to note and approve the revised approach. So please, can I have a show of hands for those who approve? Those who do not approve? Those abstaining? Are you abstaining on the firefighter pensions matter? Sorry, do you have a point?
Madam Chairman, I don't have a point. It's just I just got a bit overwhelmed with papers at one point and I couldn't quite keep where we were. So
understand. Would you?
I agree with.
Sorry, let's just do that again.
Yeah.
Those in favour of supporting the approach to the firefighter pensions update.
Yeah. Apologies.
Thank you. Yep. Those against? Those abstaining? Thank you very much. So can we turn to agenda item 8? This is about adopting the core code of ethics. Chief Fire Officer.
Thank you, Chair. So assuming members have read the paper, very simply, so Tom Windsor recommended there should be a core code of ethics for fire and rescue services. We obviously have a number of documents within our own service that have put us in a very good position as far as the inspectorate are concerned, and so Tom is the lead for the inspectorate, so we are in a very strong position. Other fire and rescue services, not so much. There are some that are in need of some advice and guidance. This code of conduct that's been issued by NFCC is that guidance. So rather than us taking the guidance and adopting it wholesale, what we have done is looked at the differences between the guidance and our own, and we will be filling the gaps. And I think that's really important because clearly our code of conduct, our values, our behaviours have all been built up over a number of years in full cooperation and collaboration with our staff. And so therefore they are owned at a organisational wide level. So what we don't want to do is tell people what their values should be. They need to feel that they can own them. So it's very important for us not to just shift away to something that's actually quite similar with effectively slightly different wording. So that's the core of this paper, and our recommendation is that you note that that's our intention and endorse it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Comments, questions? Councillor Kintersley.
Thank you. I think that's a really intelligent and forward-looking way of approaching this, to actually go back to what the work that's already been done and make sure that it actually matches what the Windsor report recommends. So yeah, brilliant. Can't say anything fairer than that, really.
So any advance on brilliant? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I welcome this one. Just a quick question on right at the end of the document of the report, there's the associated CFRS policy and guidance. Where would the employees access these policy and guidance? Is there an intranet or is there an office where they can access this?
I'll take that, Chair. On our service intranet, all the guidance policies are there. And obviously we have lots of visual reminders around the service. So our values, our behaviours, one team behaviours are all displayed throughout the organisation. And we talk a lot with our staff about them on an ongoing basis. So most staff will have a very good understanding of what the values are, what behaviours we expect, how they can challenge those behaviours and where to go to get the information they need.
Oh, Councillor Bywater.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Very happy to support this paper. I think you touched on it earlier about the number of our senior fire officers that have now moved on to pastures new. And on page 193, you talk about positive role models. As someone who's overseen children's services at the county council for a number of years, especially our care leavers, I think that's really crucial as a service that we have positive role models. And I just really want to endorse that really, because I think it's a huge amount of positive stuff that we need to give our organisation. So happy to support this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That's a great point. Thank you very much. Any other comments? So we've been asked to note and endorse. So endorse, I think, means improve. So all those in favour? I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. And so last, but by absolutely no means least, the Equalities and Inclusion Compliance Report. Do we still have Christine Doody?
We do. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Chair.
Thank you very much. Would you like to introduce this item, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'm Christine Doody. I'm the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Manager for Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Services. I joined just 4 months ago. Not new to inclusion, but new to a fire service, so learning lots. And thank you for having me in this session. The report that we're referring to is for last year, so it's for the year ending March 2021. And the context of that, as you'll see as you've read through it, is very much that was during the height of the coronavirus pandemic. So you will see that a lot of our activities either stopped or were adapted around the coronavirus restrictions, particularly any face-to-face engagement for inclusion. However, I think I'd just like to bring out a few good things that did happen even during a pandemic situation for equality, diversity and inclusion at the fire service. Having put this report together for the first time, I think you notice some good news stories as you're working it through. So just a few: the recruitment, succession and retention of female staff. We now have just over 23% of female colleagues in Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue, and that makes us the 3rd highest fire and rescue service in the country for the number of female colleagues that we have, when it's well ahead of our fire and rescue services benchmark of 18% as well. And I'm pleased to say 61 of them are in managerial roles. Maternity people are returning and not leaving. More people are moving through the ranks, and we have our first female GC as well. That's Group Commander. All of that means that our gender pay gap is now the lowest it's been since we started reporting it, and the mean bonus gap as well. So I do think there is a good news story there. Obviously, because it was a pandemic year, there was a renewed focus on wellbeing. There were virtual feedback sessions. The service hired a mental health and wellbeing advisor, and there was a lot of efforts around health and wellbeing campaigns. There was support for Black, Asian and ethnic minority employees following the death of George Floyd with listening sessions. And we're now setting up a new working group for ethnic minority colleagues, and we have a new ambassador in that space as well to take the actions forward. Recruitment managed to find the time to review the barriers to inclusion that they had been gathering during the year and made some positive changes. So candidates are now able to wear any clothes for swim tests. We increase the radius of where applicants can live, and we changed the point at which people needed to have a full driving licence. And that ongoing review of barriers continues. There's now a questionnaire to unsuccessful candidates, and anybody who wants to give feedback on recruitment at any time is offered a conversation with the inclusion team. We took our fire safety business seminars online, and that's been a great success. And we still managed to do just over 2,000 safe and well visits in the community during a pandemic. So that's my summary. Over to the floor for questions.
Thank you very much indeed. That's a really encouraging picture. We have been asked to agree the report content or make changes or make suggestions to allow for the final design work and pre-publication. So do I have comments? Councillor Taylor.
Sorry, me again. The first thing I obviously looked at on there was that took my attention was the fire break. Didn't really know a lot about it, so I did do a bit of research, and I think it's a fantastic thing for the schools. You know, that age group to get involved in. I did notice that it was on the you said it's on the Healthy School website. I wasn't quite sure what that was, so I did again look at that. It would be probably helpful to put that it's a Healthy Schools Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Within this report it just says Healthy Schools, and when I looked at it I did kind of have trouble finding it, so if we put Cambridgeshire and Peterborough with that would be great. Also it does say that obviously the fire break was a 5-day course, and because of the pandemic wasn't able to go ahead, and you've created a fire break 1 which has now been listed on the Health School website. I unfortunately couldn't find it, and I can't find it on the actual normal website either, so just wondering whether I've missed it, because the fire break 1 is a 1-day course. Am I correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, so just wondering whether I've missed it or whether it's actually not on there yet.
Yeah, I did spot it. I will be able to find the link.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or thoughts on this?
Actually, I just wanted to mention in terms of fire break, I just very recently received what I call a glowing endorsement of the fire break course since we started it up from a local teacher who commented on the difference that he had seen in the pupils that attended and how surprised he was about the impact that the fire service could have on those people who would otherwise potentially, you know, on the edge of going in the wrong direction in their lives. And the fire break course had a very significant and lasting impact on them. And we are finding that as a general rule. The fire break course is fantastic. It's massively well received. And we do charge, but that's only enough just to cover our costs. So it's a very cost-effective way and highly impactful. So yes, thank you for your comments. I think it's a very worthwhile thing for us to be doing.
Thank you. Councillor MacDonald.
Yes, just a quick question. I noticed that in the disciplinary cases there were 5 in, you know, back in 1920. These are obviously, you know, the operational jobs are tough jobs, but that is 0. That sounds really, really encouraging.
That's great. Would you like to comment on that?
Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't know that. I mean, I couldn't talk about the detail anyway, but you know, the way we operate in the service is, and it's something we've done for many years. We are a learning organisation, and we don't just say that; we actually mean it. So we recognise that 99% of people who come to work to do a good job and to try and make a difference. Now, everyone makes mistakes, and we recognise that. So what we try to do is learn from those mistakes, not immediately jump on top of them. That said, occasionally we do get people who come to work and aren't of that mindset, don't have our values, don't adhere to our behaviours, and we have no hesitation in dealing with those people.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kindersley.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is another splendid report, and there is a huge amount of really good stuff in it, and it's so tremendously impressive that such a lot was achieved during the pandemic, because you know, it was difficult for many people. So I would like, with my hat of Chair of Scrutiny, to ask Christine particularly, and perhaps senior management team, to give some thought as to what we would like to see this time next year in this report that we aren't perhaps addressing at the moment, or that perhaps isn't as good as it could be at the moment. And obviously that's something perhaps for you to think about, and maybe bring something to the Scrutiny and Overview Committee in the course of the year, because you know, as we've just heard, a learning organisation doesn't rest on its laurels. You know, it is always a journey, and you know, I think we're anxious as members to be involved and driving that journey as much as we can. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Those are sort of well-made points, and I know Christine and Chris, you'll go away and think about that, and really look for those next level items that you can push on. But thank you very much indeed. That's a great report. So turning to, so we have been asked to agree the report content or make changes. I take it that we have agreed the report. Thank you very much. Turning to the revenue and capital budget review, items to note, Matthew.
Yeah, absolutely. Next two items are to note. In terms of the revenue and capital budgeting report, you'll notice from hopefully from the narrative that a lot of attention at the moment is going into understanding where we're at with our whole time establishment, and making sure that actually we control that in a manner that means that we're not always running above establishment, but we tend to fluctuate above and below, so we can bring the budget in on target. This year we have the residual reserve that we set up a number of years ago to manage us through the significant period of change that we are experiencing in the operational side of the service. But actually, as we move forward, we need to make sure that we have control over that. So you'll see that I've started, you can see a nice graph there that hopefully you can appreciate. We are starting to get to a point where our establishment is at the desired level, and we will actually creep below it as we move forward. And certainly this is a focus move for us in terms of how we manage the operational resource into the future, which is something that Chris, myself, John, and the wider team are now looking at. Okay, what are our options? Because clearly what we can't be doing is always running over establishment. So context there. Some of the other areas that just to highlight, really, you'll see there's quite a lot of underspending at the moment, but I expect some of that to catch up significantly as we now go through the winter period and as inflation starts to hit. In terms of 5.3 rents and rates, we do have a saving there. We have saved money. We challenged all of our business rates, and we've been successful in those challenges, and we will make an ongoing saving going forward. So there is a little bit of positive news there for the future. Other parts, so IT and comms there sticks out a little bit like a sore thumb, the £690,000 underspend, but that's predominantly because many of our contracts don't actually get paid till later in the year. So you'll start to see that reduced dramatically as we go through this year. So we're keeping an eye. My major concern is around staffing levels at the moment, but hopefully by the time we get through to sort of at the end of December, that will start to level off, and we'll have very clear understanding where we're going to be at the end of the financial year. But at this stage, I'm not expecting us to be overspent. I'm expecting us to come in on budget by the end of the financial year.
Thank you very much. Do we have any comments or questions? Councillor MacDonald.
It's just a clarification for me on the fire allowances, the 34k variance.
So fire allowances is what our senior operational officers, and when I say that, those that provide out of hours cover effectively. So they're the ones that respond to the most serious incidents outside of the normal 42 hours a week that they work. So over and above, they are there, and there's an allowance paid as a result of that. And actually what you're seeing there with regard to is actually we've been carrying some level of sickness, and clearly we need to maintain the operational structure in case there is a significant incident, and that command structure needs to be in place. So we have to effectively bolster it.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Yes. Put your mic on.
Very sorry. With regard to the business rates, you state that there should be a significant retrospective refund to the authority. What sort of figure are you expecting?
200,000 as a one-off. That's a one-off figure, obviously. Going forward, we're expecting £50,000, but these go back some years. So, okay, so there will be a one-off figure that comes back. And yeah, joking aside, absolutely, we set it aside for those unexpected costs.
Thank you. Any other questions about capital and revenue budgets? Thank you. Then note.
If I can,
would you like to make another comment?
Just noted. So actually, it's worth recognising Maurice again in this piece of work. Maurice Moore, the head of property, he's pushed on the business rate since he's been in place, and with his tenacity, we perhaps wouldn't have got that money back. So it's worth highlighting that again.
Thank you. Indeed. Very well done. So those items are noted. Turning to relocation, noting the progress.
So as you've all seen, there is action on the site. I think, Chris, did you pay a visit yesterday? And there's certainly significant progress. There are continually some challenges around the site. There's been some more challenges around attenuation and making sure it doesn't flood. If it ever floods, I'll be amazed now, because of the amount of drainage that we've had to put in. At the last meeting, we agreed to increase the size of our training facility on that site because actually it made sense to do so at that time. That's come with a slight addition in terms of the foundations. However, if we look at it over the longer term, and actually what I keep doing is looking at it over the longer term, actually it's relatively small investment. What I want to be able to give you, and I'll be able to give you in January, is hopefully a full prediction in terms of what we're going to get back as well on our site at Huntingdon, which we don't know at the moment. So I can't absolutely present you the full financial picture, but hopefully I'll be able to give you a really clear indication come January. But they're working on it. I mean, it's changed all the time. So I've just I was looking there, I've had an email come through saying we've actually saved some money on legal fees, albeit, but we saved some money. So again, that will go into the pot, Councillor Kindersley, to offset some of these costs where we can. So it's an ongoing iterative process. We are managing them closely. Our quantity surveyor is pushing back because we have had some challenges around prices. Yeah, let's be clear, prices are still on the up, particularly in the construction world. But there has been some significant challenge back, and at the moment, as we say, we're making progress, and hopefully we're on course to complete on time. But whether that will be weather dependent as well. So it's just for noting now, and I'll bring another progress report back in the new year.
Thank you very much indeed. We've noted your commitment to finish to this work completing on time. So are there any other comments or observations? No? Well, thank you very much indeed for that update. Really excellent progress. Next item is dates of future meetings. Dawn.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, this is the usual report. The dates are basically based on the 21-22 dates. We're looking from July onwards next year. There are 2 dates to be confirmed for committees. I've worked around the County Council's meetings calendar and the Peterborough dates where I've known them, and also senior officer commitments, and hopefully we'll be getting those dates out to you quite soon. if everyone's in agreement.
Is everyone content, or are there any objections at this point? All content?
Chair, not an objection. The policy and resources, I see we got one in December and January. Is there any particular reason for that?
There is, because generally what we do, we give ourselves the December one to go through the draft budget pre-consultation with the public, and then we consider that consultation hopefully in January, and if there's any significant changes that we need to make before we go to fire authority. And so we just give ourselves a reserve. We don't necessarily use them all, the January one, but absolutely just gives us that reserve date.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? With that, then, the dates are noted, and thank you very much. That concludes matters for today.
Thank you, Chair.